So guys, today we are going to do the critical analysis of the budget 2026. I've already made a video and that was a commentary on the budget which was presented by the finance minister, right, on 1st of Feb. Today, I'm going to tell you, as the name suggests, the dark sides of the budget, the hidden truth that was obviously not told in the parliament, but these are the things which our budget lacks, okay? So I'm going to discuss it in point-wise fashion and let's get started. So see guys, first of all, if I talk about the capital investment, that is gross fixed capital formation. So there is a very shocking thing that from past 12 years, this gross fixed capital formation is actually stuck. It's actually fixed at 30% of GDP. It's not moving beyond it. It's only 30%, and that too from past 12 years. Okay. Secondly, I want to talk about the net FDI as a percentage of GDP. So, net FDI as the percentage of GDP in the previous year is only 0.09%. So, of our GDP, only 0.09% of is from FDI. That means foreign direct investment. So, foreigners, investors, they are not interested in investing in India for a long term. Okay, guys, this is the scenario of FDI. If I talk about FPI, foreign portfolio investment, it actually gives the money, the money gets circulated in our economy. The foreign exchange gets circulated in our economy by FPI, okay, on day-to-day basis. But what we observe is that FPI is being pulled out of our country. That means foreign investors, foreign portfolio investors, they are withdrawing their invested money already. Forget about reinvesting or investing the higher amount. Okay. This is FDI, FPI. Now, if I talk about the private investment done in our country by the private investors. So private investment is stuck. Again, it is stuck at 22% of GDP. It is not increasing from quite a long time. So it is 22% of the GDP. So stuck here, right? So if we combine these three figures and stats, what we understand is that no one is actually investing in India, whether it is private investors, whether it is portfolio investors or the FDI. No one is spending in India. So aggregate demand is most crucial for the growth. And the formula of aggregate demand is C plus I plus G plus X minus M, right? What we saw that private investment is stuck, it is not moving. What we saw is that net export in our country, it is also not helping us because there is constant FDI and FPI is pulling out of country. So these two factors are not helping in our aggregate demand. So we are only left with the two things, that is consumption expenditure and government expenditure. And that's what the Keynes said, that when such is the situation, then government expenditure becomes very important and government has to take the responsibility and it has to invest in the economy. Then only the economic cycle will continue functioning properly. Okay, but what we observe that if this is the scenario, then the approach should have been, then government should have increased its expenditure. Government should have increased its spending, capital expenditure. But what we are observing, it's just contrary to this fact. And what we observe is that government is actually cutting down the capital expenditure. That means these two factors were bringing down the aggregate demand, and now government is also reducing the capital expenditure. thereby dragging the aggregate demand downwards, right? And the government expenditure, I'll give you the figure for it. The government expenditure, capital expenditure, if I talk of the capex in 2025-26, it has actually being reduced by the whooping 1,44,367 crores. This much reduction has been done in the capex of the government. Okay. Apart from this, if I break it down, so what we see is that center has reduced its capex by 25,334 crores. So center, it has reduced its capex by 25,334 crores. Whereas the advances and grants that were given to the state by the center, the advances that were given to the states by the center, so that those states can do capital expenditure, that has also been reduced by 1,19,041 crore. This much reduction is in the advances in comparison to the previous years given to the states. Okay. And there is no explanation for this in the budget, that why government has reduced the capex, why the advances which were given to the states are being reduced. No such explanation is being given, whereas a paradoxical step should have been taken by the government. Moving on, what we observe is that youth unemployment is at all-time high, and youth unemployment is 15% now. But the more mesmerizing or the shocking fact is that out of the people which are employed, let's take them as 100%, out of them 25% of the workforce, out of 100, 25% of the workforce is actually doing regular jobs. That means remaining 75% are either doing some sort of temporary jobs, shift jobs, part-time jobs, whatever you call it. Okay. So only 25% of the workforce is in regular jobs. The thing that we observed, again a shocking and stunning fact, is that we all know the basic economics says that for growth, how do we judge growth? We judge growth that the migration of workers takes place from the agriculture sector to the manufacturing sector and then on to the service sector, right? But just the opposite is happening here, and more workers have moved to the agriculture sector in previous 5 years. So migration towards agriculture sector has increased in the 5 years. Okay, if we compare the data of 2020 and if we compare, or 2021, and we compare the data of now, so more workers are there in the agriculture sector. That means they are not getting employment, or the employment they are getting, the pay that they are getting, it is so meager that they prefer to go back to the villages and switch on to agriculture. Okay. Now, this is the country whose population is 144 crores. Out of 144 crores, it is again shocking that only 1.95 crore people find employment in manufacturing sector. So only 1.95 CR people are employed in the manufacturing out of 144 crores. And government talks about boosting the manufacturing sector, whereas people are not even employed in the manufacturing sector. Next point again related to manufacturing sector is that manufacturing is stuck to 16% of GDP from past so many years. The contribution of manufacturing sector is 16% of GDP, and this is not the case as of now. It has been a while now. From so long, it's stuck at 16%. Okay. Last year, what we observed was that finance minister announced a scheme called as Pradhan Mantri Internship Scheme or Pradhan Mantri Apprenticeship Scheme. Okay. And under this scheme, the corporate houses were persuaded, they were told to hire the fresh college graduates and offer them internship so that these graduates can have the exposure of the market, they can experience the real time things, and they can develop their expertise, if you remember. Okay. And after this persuasion by the government of India last year, these corporate houses, they launched 1.65 lakh offers. Okay. So 1.65 lakh vacancies were there to be filled and to take the internship by these companies. Okay. But the stunning fact here is that out of 1.65 lakh positions that were offered by these companies, only 33,000 were accepted. That means the fresh graduates were not even ready to work in these companies, and we do not understand that what the scenario might have been, what the situation might have been, that people even do not want to take internship. And out of these 33,000, the people who accepted this offer of internship, 6,000 left the job in the first few months, which again points out that the environment, the culture, whatever you call it, or the situations were not in their favor. That's why first they opted for it and then they dropped it out. So that means that this scheme of the government, it failed miserably. But in this budget, there is no mention of it. It's again forgotten that why the scheme was launched, and if it was launched, so what is its success rate, what is its failure, what are the hurdles and challenges to be encountered. But no such mention is here in the budget. Okay guys, I want to attract your attention towards one more important fact, and that is the nominal growth rate of our GDP, right? An obvious question that you might ask is that why are we discussing nominal growth rate? Real GDP growth rate is a better factor. Okay, you all know this because nominal does not incorporate the factor of inflation. So the figures that we get in nominal, they are not that accurate. How do we find out real GDP? So the real GDP, this is basic formula. Real GDP is actually nominal GDP and then whatever indicator you want to use. If you want to use CPI, consumer price index, or you want to use WPI, or you want to use deflator, GDP deflator, you divide it by that into 100, you get the real GDP, right? That's the formula. But again, all these three, CPI is 1 by 2, that is 0.5, deflator is 0.5, and this is in negative. So if you will divide it by any such thing, right, smaller the denominator, greater will be the value. So your GDP, real GDP will come out to be very high. It's simple maths. If denominator is low, the fraction would increase, right guys? Yeah. Now we do not know that what all mathematics has been done, what observation has been done, but all these CPI and deflator are in fraction and WPI is negative. So real GDP is very high. So let's not get into this. Let's talk about this nominal GDP to have a better look of the picture. So if I talk about the nominal GDP growth rate, and I'll give you the figures for 3 consecutive years. So in 23-24, the nominal GDP growth rate was 12%. In 24-25, this declined and became 9.8%. In 25-26, this comes out to be 8%. So I understand that 12% is high. Obviously, we have not excluded, we have not paid cognizance to the factor of inflation. That's why it is so high. But leave that thing, because we are taking nominal GDP, so this factor of inflation is not tackled in all 3 cases. But if you look at it, nominal GDP is decreasing. So that means real GDP is also decreasing. Now, why nominal GDP is decreasing? This explanation has again been not given by the finance minister, but we understand from the basic macroeconomics that when your aggregate demand is decreasing, and why aggregate demand is decreasing, I already told you, because your foreign investment, whether it is direct foreign investment or it is portfolio investment, is decreasing, right? When your private investment is also decreasing. So one of the paramount factor which can increase the aggregate demand is government spending. But government, instead of increasing its spending, it is cutting it down by huge figures. So guys, when the aggregate demand would be low, obviously the production would be low. And that is what is reflected here, that GDP, nominal GDP, is declining every year. Now, if I talk about the fiscal consolidation, and fiscal consolidation is very important. Fiscal consolidation is something that actually tries to tackle the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is a deficit where you subtract the total revenue from total expenditure, but in total revenue you do not take borrowing. Why? Because the figure that you get of fiscal deficit, that much only government has to borrow. Okay, so fiscal deficit gives you the amount that you need to borrow. But what government has done is, now government is using another parameter to discuss fiscal consolidation, and that parameter is debt to GDP ratio. So the focus of government is more on debt to GDP ratio rather than fiscal deficit. But a renowned economist of our country, Dr. Rangarajan, has said, and it is very obvious also, anyone who knows economics can understand it. I'll try to explain. As I just now told you, that fiscal deficit gives you what? Fiscal deficit actually gives you the total amount that you have to borrow. Right, guys? Whatever would be the figure of fiscal deficit, that much you have to borrow. That means fiscal deficit is talking about debt. Right? And debt to GDP ratio is also talking about debt. So whether you take debt to GDP ratio or whatever, it is actually talking about fiscal deficit only. Both are same. Both vary accordingly. Whatever would be the depth, according to that, debt to GDP ratio and fiscal deficit will change. Okay, but this parameter is accepted globally. Okay, but Indian government has switched on to this, but it's of no avail, because still we can understand the fiscal deficit, and fiscal deficit for the year, and this was taken as a good news, but there are few very important facts hidden beneath it which were obviously not discussed in the budget. Fiscal deficit comes out to be 4.4% of GDP, and it is mentioned in the economic survey as well. Okay, that's great. But here, once again, the shocking thing is that in 26-27, government is projecting fiscal deficit of only 4.3% of GDP. My question is, why the decline is so small? Only 0.1% is of fiscal deficit is going to decrease in 26-27, not the 4.4%, rather only 0.1%. Okay. That's one thing. I'll get into it later. Now, if I talk about revenue deficit is total revenue expenditure. What is total revenue expenditure? You all know revenue expenditure is the operational expense of the government, the day-to-day expenses of the government, that is giving salaries, pensions, paying interest, all these things come under revenue deficit. Okay. Revenue deficit for year 2025-26, it is 1.5% of GDP. And again, the shocking fact is that in the year 26-27, it will remain as 1.5% of GDP. There will not be any improvement in the revenue deficit. Okay, so government is showing very little improvement in the fiscal deficit and no improvement at all in the revenue deficit. If I remind you of the FRBM targets, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, right, of 2001-2. So according to the and FRBM targets are the ideal. Okay, every government tries to stick to those targets or at least reach those targets. Those are the ideal targets. FRBM targets are that fiscal deficit should be somewhere around 3% of GDP. Ours is 4.4%. And revenue deficit should be nil. This is the ideal condition. Revenue deficit should be nil. There should not be any revenue deficit. But still, till 1%, it is permissible that you can have the revenue deficit till 1% of GDP, right? Our revenue deficit is 1.5% and it will remain 1.5% in the upcoming year. By the way, this year is not ended as of now, right? 51 days are left still. So it is going to remain 1.5% in the remaining 51 days, and in the upcoming year, starting from 1st of April to the next 31st of March, it will again be 1.5% of GDP. Okay. So the fiscal consolidation that government is trying to aim is, it is very slow. And if government proceeds with this speed, it will take at least 12 years to achieve the FRBM targets. Right. We are talking about the Viksit Bharat in 2047, but at this rate, it will take next 12 years to reach these targets. Okay. Now, the question is that if government is doing so bad, fiscal consolidation is so bad, then how come we have such impressive figure of fiscal deficit? Why has fiscal deficit reduced to such low value? So see, fiscal deficit reached 4.4% because, as I told you earlier, government has reduced its total expenditure, and let me remind you, that is the expenditure which ought to be invested in capital. Okay, so government has reduced its total expenditure by 1 lakh crores. And Reserve Bank of India, it gave the dividend of 3 lakh crores to the government. So due to these 4 lakh crores, the fiscal deficit is 4.4% of GDP. If you will remove these 4 lakh crores, the fiscal deficit would be somewhere around 5.5% of GDP. Okay, so the fiscal deficit which has been reached and which is 4.4% of GDP, it is not due to any fiscal discipline or some good policies. It is rather the dividend of RBI and cutting down on the capital expenditure. Okay. Now, let me talk with reference to different ministries, okay, and different yojnas, the policies. There has been a whooping cut of 60,000 crores in agriculture and rural development. That means The allocation that were done earlier, in comparison to that, 60,000 crores have been reduced. The allocation has been cut down by 60,000 crores in the agriculture and rural development sector. Okay. Agriculture sector, the expenditure has been cut down by 7,000 crores approximately. It is somewhere around 6,857 or 58 crores. I'm approximately saying 7,000 crores. Rural development expenditure has been cut down by 53,000 crores approximately. The figure is more than 53,000. It is somewhere around 53,370 something. But let's round it about. Let's say 53,000 crores approximately. So, have our villages developed? Our farmers are earning a huge income or what? That there is no need for investment in agriculture sector? Are we following proper technological processes in agriculture? Has our production in agriculture increased to such high extent that we do not need any further attention towards it? These are the questions, obvious questions, and you know the answers. If you go to the rural areas, they are still lagging the basic facilities of sanitation, electricity, pure drinking water, and even houses. But still, in rural development, 53,000 crores have been deducted. If I talk about Gram Sadak Yojana, that means building of roads in the villages, there has been a cut of 7,201 crore rupees. Okay. And the roads in the rural areas are still in the pathetic shape. Still, this cut is there. If I talk about Awas Yojana, Awas, houses, allotting or allocating houses to the needy, to the people who do not have shelter or place to live, there has been a cut of 22,331 crore rupees in this budget. Now, I think you are getting why the fiscal deficit has reduced to 4.4 crores, because the capex has been reduced. If we talk about grants and aids given to the states to develop their rural areas, there has been the cut of 30,391 crore rupees in the grants and aids that were extended from center to the states. Okay. Next, let's talk about Jal Jeevan Mission. Recently, there was a news, people dying in Indore by drinking contaminated water. I don't know, have you heard of it or not? It was quite a news. Yeah. And recently, that suicide case of the sisters that occurred in that place, there was not even a tap, you know, a pump, a tap, nothing was there in that area. That means infrastructure is lagging. Okay. But still, in Jal Jeevan Mission, Water Ministry, there has been a cut. Forget about cut. In Jal Jeevan Mission, 67,000 crores were allotted by the finance minister last year to the Jal Jeevan Mission. But this ministry was only able to spend 17,000 crore rupees. It was not able to spend remaining 50,000 crores of rupees. It remained untouched. So the question is why? Why they did not make any expenditure when the basic expenditure of water bodies and the pumps and taps is lagging? Okay, and this is the case when people in the country, and that too in the place like Indore, I am not talking about some rural area, even in Indore, people are dying after drinking contaminated water. Still, ministry is not spending even the budget. Forget about that the allocation is high or low. In this case, whatever the allocation is, they are able to spend less than 1/3 of it. Okay, guys, the defense expenditure. Now, this is the question of national security. And if you look at the data and figures of other countries, you look at of China, US, you look at these countries and you look at the allocation they do to defense, because defense is something of prima foci, you have to focus a lot on it. It's the matter of national security. But the defense expenditure is at a low, all-time low of 11.14% of GDP. This is the all-time low. If I talk about the scientific department, the department that does the research work, R&D, the scientific and the money that is spent for the scientific innovation, when we are trying to become green economy, when we are using, or we are planning to use alternative sources of energy, we are trying, and we have given the date also that we will reduce our carbon footprint by substantial amount. So we need innovations, we need scientific researches, but scientific department did not spend 18,665 crore rupees out of the total sum that was allotted to it this year. Urban Development Ministry, they did not spend 39,573 crore rupees out of the total sum that was allotted to them. Social welfare has been cut down. The budget that was allotted to social welfare this year, it has been cut down by 9,999 crores. In the budget, there was the discussion, and this was a welcome thing. I actually appreciated this step of government. They talked about 3 dedicated chemical parks, right, where chemical products, manufacturing, and all these things would occur. They are talking about developing 3 dedicated chemical parks, but the surprising thing is the outlay for the park is 0. So without the outlay, how can you develop the park? 3 parks they proposed, but the outlay is 0. Finance Minister allotted 10,000 crore rupees to Biopharma Shakti in the next 5 years. This government, BJP government, it came into power in 2024. 2 years have already passed by. The government will remain in power. This government will remain in power for next 3 years. I do not understand that how can they allot 10,000 crore rupees for next 5 years when they are in the power for 3 years. But anyway, they allotted 10,000 crore rupees in Biopharma Shakti for next 5 years. That means, let me make it simple for you. The meaning is that in next 5 years, including this year, government will spend money on Biopharma Shakti mission, and the total of that money in the 5 years would come out to be 10,000 crores. That's what the meaning of it is, right, guys? But the allocation done in the budget of 2026-27 is 500 crores. So now 2 years only remain. So in remaining 2 years, is government planning to spend 9,500 crores on it to fulfill its target of 10,000 crores? Electronics, small component manufacturing units. Again, in the next 5 years, Finance Minister says that 40,000 crores are being allotted and it will be spent on it. Okay, but this year they gave only 1,500 crores. So again, the same question, that how would they be able to complete the target of 40,000 crores in the remaining 2 years? Because 5 years is a hoax. This government is in power for next 3 years only, and the budget of 1 year has already come. So in the remaining 2 years, how will they complete 38,500 crores of their commitment. Anyway, container manufacturing, again proposed by the government, by the Ministry of Finance, Finance Minister, 10,000 crores have to be allotted in the next 5 years. But surprisingly, allocation this year is zero. They did not allot a single rupee for this. National Fiber Scheme, Mega Textile Scheme, Mahatma Gandhi Swaraj Institutes, they have discussed it in the budget. They are saying that they will develop these things, but the outlay is zero. It's just the announcement without any outlay. So guys, these were few aspects, and I have discussed these aspects. Most of the aspects I have discussed with you. There are still few minute aspects which are remaining, which I'll cover in the economic survey critical analysis. Every year I give the commentary on the economic survey and budget, and then I do the critical analysis. So this was the critical analysis of the budget. In the upcoming days, I'll do the critical analysis of economic survey as well. Okay, so I hope the video was understandable to you and you understood the things clearly. So that's it for today. Thank you.